Welcome to Warblog. This is a development video. In it I will also mention I just discovered that I can adjust the volume of my videos after I've recorded them, but before I upload them. Or can I? No, I can't actually. I mean I can and I can't because I upload directly to... Oh no, I can save them and then yeah. Anyway, that's irrelevant. I mean, I can adjust the volume. Actually, I'm pretty sure I can. I know I can on the video, when it's on the hard drive. So, for example, if I want to upload it to Facebook, then I just go in there and I adjust the volume and just press the up button. It goes all the way up. You know, so if I think my volume's a bit low, I can adjust that, which is neat. I'm pretty sure I should be able to do it before I upload it to YouTube, so we'll figure that one out. So this video should essentially be really loud because I'm tired of my videos being inaudible for a whole number of reasons. Anyway, this is a development video, and it's not a major one. Most of the developments I'm doing these days are sort of behind the scenes, but this one sort of well, basically you can see on here the little town names and things. So when you've got basically adjust the font size. There's nothing special about it. So for example here you can see that this is a city called Chisinau Kishinev. This is a village called Vadel Louis Voda, but you can see the font sizes change as things go up. I've also changed a couple of other little things that sort of have a little bit of bearing on the way these things work, because they have historically, for example here, it's sort of decided that it's going to be quite narrow, and that's because the town name's got two words to it. But instead of this all being on one line, it's put it onto two. It doesn't really matter, but before it was really odd, and I think basically we can have quite long strings now, because instead of forcing it to be the width that it was, I've actually adjusted things. For example, these things here, these are always a bit odd. I don't know why. I think it's got something to do with why this is here. I don't really care, to be quite honest, but I've made this adjustment so that the big things here, for example this, which is anything that, so basically it's more like a map. I mean, in a map you know the settlement names are larger depending on their importance, and so now this might change. For example, the villages, I might make them a little bit smaller. I haven't really sort of really got my head around the full impact. I'm sort of really more interested in sort of where things just go pear-shaped because of it, maybe when I've got things off the side of the map here. But this is this is an improvement, because I don't think Crouching Tiger would have ever been that long before. I don't know why it is that long when some of these other ones are sort of, as we looked before, are concatenating. But the thing to bear in mind, this is all HTML, so it's all browser dependent. And I really don't look at how this looks on other browsers, but I've often wondered whether it works on anything other than Firefox, because that's what I use. But I've never had any complaints, and I've looked at it on other browsers. But the thing is, the way this appears is actually browser dependent. I mean, for example, this is an alpha transparency, and on some systems it looks very different. I have seen other systems where the colours are so different that you can hardly see anything, and I don't really bother with all of that. So here you can see how it used to be, but you can't really see too much because all the counters, which is normal. But so that's pretty much it, really. I mean, I'm still sort of looking at it myself. Obviously these are quite big images, and so they take a long time to load up. I'm aware of that, and again I don't really care, because once you've loaded it up once, it sort of tends to store them. But that probably doesn't work very well for Google, but I don't really care about Google in that regard. So we've got a couple of towns there. So again, I think that sort of generally works, and I do sort of intend to twiddle with it. I think they're looking a bit bold. I mean, they are bold. I mean, literally bold. But I mean, they're looking a bit sort of. I sort of want them to work in the same way as a map works. I mean, this has got Serbia on it, Croatia. I think one of the key things to this whole game system, OssyJack, is that the maps in many instances are quite attractive, even though they're very basic and rudimentary and crude in some regards. I mean, from a hex perspective they are, but I sit there and I quite often look back and I think, this looks really good, I really like this map. And in fact I was actually thinking today about actually not changing any tact or focus, but sort of focusing more on, for example, basically printing this whole map out. I mean, I like this map, but when you look at the screenshot, that's all you get. It doesn't really do it justice, but there's no such thing as the full image. So, for example, when I go to, and I quite like this little discussion forum where, you know, if you are thinking of playing, you can feel free to join up and talk about, you know, some of the battles, etc. But what I tend to do here is I just grab the screenshots, and that's what the screenshots look like. They're that size because I want to put them into, I don't know why they have to be that size, but that's the sort of size that's recommended for the OG icon for Facebook. And so if Facebook finds something of these proportions, it automatically adds them. Not a lot of people sort of do that, but it doesn't really do much for the game. But this is the Transnistria region of Moldova. So what I'm trying to say, in a nutshell, as a sort of aside, I'm trying to make the maps look more attractive so that I can sort of, you know, actually print this out. Now, there are other things that I could talk about when it comes down to printing, because I have always in the back of my mind considered the print and play options, and I sort of want to move towards that at some point, so that members can just print the maps out and print the tokens out. But it's more complex than that. In theory, I mean, it's complex enough as it is, but it's more complex because you then got to sort of write rules that will work on a tabletop, and then you've also got to write, you've got to somehow annotate where everything goes. It just becomes a little more complicated. But the thing is, I mean, for example, this map here, I mean, it's an odd one, to be quite honest. I'm so used to the desert locations, but I really like it. I just think there's a sort of, and I quite often think, you know, that there is a sort of, to some extent, an art in these. That there are, you know, the maps in their own right are almost a form of art. I mean, I think they are. I mean, whether they're good art or not, that's something else. But I just really can't remember which one it was. But in here somewhere, I wish I could figure it out. I will never find it. Not in this sort of. No, it was one of the. 3 pages of these things now. No one never looks at them. I sort of do it for SEO value as well, but it's one of these sort of ones that are from the Iraq War, and it's stitched together and it looks really good. In fact, to be quite honest, the best way to... Oh, no. Let's just have a look. Oh, you get the point. It's just I don't really want to sort of... It's a long way down. If you look down the Twitter thing, yeah, there it is. Yeah, I don't think there's anything to give away just by clicking on here. Basically, as you can see, I add these. Now I like that one for me, that sort of looks like an interesting map. And that's what I'm sort of getting to. Just sort of, the maps in their own right. Well, I mean, to be quite honest, I like that, but it's it's a little simpler. This one doesn't really do much for me because I think of the scale. I mean, this one is actually more interesting, but it's sort of irrelevant. But I think they all, in their own right, when you actually look at them, are actually quite good. I like the maps, and I'm trying to make them a little better with those names. That's what I'm trying to get to here. But this one here, I mean, it's only a slight difference, but the thing is, it's been stitched together. It's not the standard height like that, and it's sort of the whole thing, and it isn't actually the whole thing. I'm pretty sure it's only a section of the whole thing. But what I quite fancy doing is actually getting all this. Now the thing is, I can't do that. I can't just press a button and do it. To do that, I would have to actually move here, take a screenshot up to, I was going to say that mark there, but I'm pretty sure that mark is on my screen, up to this line of counters here. 1, 2, 3. Oh no, that mark is there. I thought it's on the screen. What the hell could that be? And then going like that, and taking another screenshot, and then going into my graphics program, and then stitching this one to the other one, and then cropping it, and then creating a map. Now that's actually, because everything I do is generally the easy things. It's an easy course, and when I do the thumbnails, it's just standard. I just do a print screen, I paste it onto a template that I've got, which automatically trims it because it's a template, and save it. But this is actually quite complex. There's too many steps in there to make it sort of a no-brainer every time I finish a game. But the thing is, I sort of quite fancy doing that, and now that I've got to this stage, and if I can get a balance with these names, I think that I don't want to sort of make them sort of cartographic quality, but I think they have an inherent value and an inherent sort of interest. I mean, even things like that, I don't think it's not as exciting as some of the others. But you can look at them and say, well, that's an interesting set of rivers. These are obviously the minor rivers, the major rivers. It's not looking at them as maps, which is essentially what they are anyway. But anyway, so that's all this is really about. It's just this sort of development of town names like that. So there's Chosin Reservoir. So obviously you can see the importance. Now I don't always do these. I mean, this would have been quite a good one actually, because the scale, it's one of those ones where there's no roads. It's the whole of Syria. I did think of going back and putting some roads. To be quite honest, I skipped through this because it was such a difficult one to do because there's no traditional sort of units involved. It's just blowing a load of things up. I mean, they're all assets and things like that, so it doesn't really work as a war game, more as a representation. But you could almost take that and almost use that in a news article. I wouldn't necessarily say that's what I want people to do, but I don't know, maybe that's okay. But I mean, the thing is, I like all of the maps. But some of them are actually so attractive. I mean, this is 1982 from the Iran-Iraq War, and I think this is going to be the one we were looking at earlier. Which does go a little further down. Where's that? Yeah, I mean, so if we go back there, we can see it stops at that counter there, just near Shatara. There. So we lose that bottom bit, but again, a map like that to me just looks really, really attractive in its own right, and it just makes the whole. I was actually looking at this one and I said to myself, my God, how could anyone look at this map and not want to play it? That's what I thought. But obviously the game's not festooned with people playing maps. The thing is, I know I look at quite a few videos on war games in general, mainly from my own point of view as a developer really, and there's a lot of sort of focus on the quality of the map, the aesthetics of the map, and a lot of maps are actually, well, to be quite honest, a lot of them look incredibly attractive, but at the same time, a lot of them don't. And I think the things that make a map look incredibly attractive, the tools and aspects of them are the same as they've always been throughout time, and that's detail. You know, a lot of these, I've seen a lot of maps, and they look, well, they sort of look good, but at the same time they don't. They don't to me, because they don't have town names on them. You can't see the towns. I mean, just to put it in perspective, I'm completely turned off by any map that's sort of like a squad leader type, you know, with rectangular buildings and odd bushes and things like that. I just don't I don't like even looking at those. It's the whole genre just what's it? The opposite of attract. It doesn't attract me. It repels me. But that's maybe a harsh way of putting it. Maybe. But anyway, the thing is, you know, I look at quite a few sort of videos and I see sort of, you know, people have got a map of, say, quite often things like Western Europe, you know, for the Second World War, or for, you know, the Cold War period, of, you know, Third World War type games. I mean, for example, I mean some of my favourite maps still are and always have been, for no particular reason, because it's the only game I had, the GDW Third World War series. I mean, those maps seem pretty good, and I think that these are sort of the maps that I'm doing here. I wouldn't say they're better, because the thing is, the one thing that they do have, they have the ability to actually be what I would call more roster based, and that's not necessarily actually true, but in the sense that mine have to be vector based, and that's sort of, again, not necessarily true, but I have to be able to put these together in a modular form. So, you know, these roads, I can't choose this road, I can't say, oh, I'll do this. So they might have a road, and they will sort of, instead of going up like this, it will actually be as it should be, and it will go along here, and it will actually look more organic and less sort of like a bunch of, you know, Lego pieces that have been stuck together. I mean, for example, my rivers will go along the hex lines. I have to, because I have to draw them that way, I have to build them that way. But, you know, for these tabletop games, they can actually make them, you know, sometimes it's hard to actually know where the river goes. I mean, sometimes they have rivers that sort of almost go through the hex. You think, well, can I get into that hex, and how does that work? Most games are actually pretty good and clear on that, but what I'm saying is they have a more organic nature to them, more like real maps. I mean, some people actually use real maps and then emboss, you know, the hexes on top, and I don't really like that. I mean, the thing, my take on maps and the whole sort of aspect of the way they work comes down to, well, this is quite well developed sort of notion and idea, but the abstract nature of them. So, for example, here, if you were to actually look at this lake, it's probably not, well, certainly not hexagonal, but it might not be that significant. But the thing is, you apply the features so that they represent the significant nature of them. For example, there could be lots of little streams, but going around here, but we're not detailing them because they're not significant at the scale and for the implications of this game and this situation. Whereas this one here, basically what we're saying here is not that it's that big, you can't get from there to there because there's a water feature in the way. It's so big, but it could only be, you know, sort of almost like that, you know, if you can sort of follow what I'm doing there. But because it sort of significantly blocks movement from there to there, it becomes sort of square like that. And another thing that really I do actually like is, for example, here you could apply a coastline. So instead of being a straight line there, it would actually be, you would, one way or another, you would apply some kind of, either in this one, so the desert extended over here, or in this one, the sea extended into here. So it gave it a more organic sort of coastal structure. And unfortunately, I did actually spend quite a bit of time trying to sort that out. I didn't do anything developmentally wise, but I've actually got a whiteboard here which I'm looking at, and I can't see it because the door's shut across it, but mathematically it's not possible. I say that with a laugh because I'm sure someone will be able to say, yes, it is. It's not. I mean, it's not in the sense that I could do it in the way I apply things. I mean, just just because we're at that level, let me maybe give you a clue. For example, let's go back to here. On here, I could say on here, when I'm applying this hex here, I could say I could look around. Is that C? No. Okay, fine. Is that C? No. Is that C? No. Is that C? Yes. So then what I do is I apply some C into there, almost like that. If you can imagine that that is the blue line going across there. However, the difficulty comes when you've got this one. If this one is C, then this doesn't need to go to the edge. Now if this one is C, as it is, if this as it is, you would draw a line like that, and that's fine. And then if this one was true, you would, and it's all working, it's all fine. But the thing is, you've got this one as C, but this one here, okay, let's do this exactly as it is. This one is C, but this one is also C. And so what you'd end up with is these lines cross just there, making it impossible to do. You would need so many. You could actually maybe go to another level and do a massive amount of calculations, but I just don't want to do that. And I have thought about applying custom zones, and that would actually do it. So I would go in there and I'd say, okay, well this needs an additional layer on top of this that does that for me. But the thing is, it does become incredibly complicated. I would need. Let me just sort of explain this. I'm not sure whether I can. Yes, I can. I can do it on this whiteboard here. The thing is, this is how it sort of is. There's a problem. I think that's the edge of the board, isn't it? The edge of the world. The thing is, if I do this, as I said, as C, it will have to go all the way down to there. Now that's fine if this one is C and goes along there, but if this is also C in here, so if we now got C in here and C in here, this would have to actually go across like that. And so it's that crossing there. So if we magnify that, and so we're looking really magnified, this one comes along here with the C, and it goes all the way along the edge in anticipation of meeting another hex with the same thing. But if it's actually C along here, there would be this cross, and that would just look stupid. So you would actually have to anticipate and somehow deal with all that, and automatically there's no real way of doing it. It just becomes so complex, because then you would have to say you would actually have to start saying, how does this hex relate to not only the surrounding hexes from the point of view of C, but the surrounding hexes with the point of view of land. And then, to be quite honest, I've sat there for a long time with my whiteboard trying to figure this problem out, and I only do things that I consider to be eloquent. Eloquent means it's simple, and this is why a lot of these things are as they are. They're just simple things. And so if something is complex, then I just don't do it. My theory on that is that life is complex enough, and as you can see, I mean, this is a sea of complexity, but the thing is, it's all put together with what I call eloquent programming. I'm not brilliant at it, but I'm good enough. As you can see, I mean, this just looks, as far as I'm concerned, pretty amazing. I mean, some maps don't look so amazing, obviously, but I mean, when I've done as many as I have, I'm pretty sure that some of them are going to look pretty good. And so that's that really. But the thing is, what I could do, and I am actually considering doing something like this for other reasons as well, and that's to apply custom tiles. so they could be very specific features that are almost bespoke just to one game. So that's a terrain type. Now these ones are automatic, so I know if there's a road going like that and a road going like that, I say don't show them, show the curve like that. But what I don't have, as you can see, for example here, I don't have if it's like that and like that and like that, then don't show them, show this. But I could go and apply that, but then you start to get this like loads of variance on that. But that would be something I could do next, and I'll have to apply it for the highways and for the tracks, etc, etc. But there's plenty of scope for development, but this video really is just about that development, the towns and things like that, and I'm quite excited by that. To me that sort of looks quite good. I've got a lot of other developments in the pipeline. I sort of tend to sort of do them every now and then. But the big project, the big development I want to do is something that the players will never see, you guys. Basically, it means that I could go into a scenario like this, because at the moment it's quite complex. If I want to edit this, I've got to go in there and then I've got to see this one. I've got to actually click it, and it will go into an edit screen, and then I've got to change something, and then I go update, and it comes out. Now the thing is, if I wanted to update all of these units here, it would actually take a lot of time. It's hardly worth it. Now what I want to do is put a download button, so I just download all this into a spreadsheet, a CSV file, and then I could just go into the spreadsheet and just change these all to 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and I could do it all in one hit, and then I come back and then I upload it, and it basically swaps it. Now that would have other things, because I could add rows. For example, I could add more rows. The benefit of that is, well, obviously it makes editing things a lot easier all around. For example, I might want to actually, put in the squadron name here. But when it comes down to going back to games, and then actually, for example, this has got M. That's an internal thing saying this is a medium unit. So presumably the YPG in my folder, personal folder, have a smaller one. It's still infantry company, so I can't call them both infantry. So this is all wrong. But to change that, I'd have to go click, wait for it to load, and that can take a long time for some reason. Sometimes it can be really slow. But anyway, I'd have to do it one at a time, 1, 2, 3. That could take 20 minutes. It's just not worth it. But if I had that download, I could do it all in one hit. But the thing is, the benefit of that, the key thing, is that I can start to go back and review very historic situations and put in the correct orders of battle. So for example, I could add more of these, I could move them around so I'd know where they are. I mean, for example, this one's at, well, it doesn't actually say where he is. It says it on the map, in theory. So he's at 4i. I could move him from 4i to presumably 4j there, or that might be 4j. I could move things around, etc, etc. So, but that was something that you would never see. It would make a huge difference to my ability to then go back and look at some of these things, because the thing is, although it's a blog in that sense, if we go back, let's go 1950 to 1970 just for a laugh. All of these are not in the same league as the battles that I'm doing currently. They're in the news because they're very sort of just get a few counters and plonk them on the board. I mean, this one here, they will probably be very specific with names, and so I could go back and actually fine-tune the orders of battle, because in some of these, I think, especially the Vietnam games, they're problematic in the sense that the US and basically written about, what is it, chronicled, archived, everything about the war, to the extent that we know everything about it, down to some of the most fine details. For example, we know that this is the 46th Infantry Regiment, 1st Battalion, and the details are all on there. Now this just says South Vietnamese Civilian Company, but we could probably get some details on that, and actually, for example, this, I could probably go back, because that is a very specific unit. That unit was in there. For example, this I think is Australian, the 11th Mobile Strike Force. We know that's in there, but this Marine unit probably has a designation, so I could go back in there and actually give it that designation. So what I'm saying is, these older scenarios, the orders of battle should be quite specific, and the thing with these specific orders of battle, they give you these sort of bizarre situations that don't really work in a traditional hex encounter format, because it's just a little unit on its own. And that's one of the things with the Vietnam War. A lot of what you get is just sort of, you can't produce a front line. It's very odd in that way. It's quite hard to model from a war game perspective, not like the Korean War where you have these very dense front lines. The Iran-Iraq War, you have these very dense front lines, and so it's a bit odd to develop to sort of simulate and to model what actually happened. But but the thing is, it's not so much the spin side to that, but that's basically to some extent driven by the available information on what was at the scene. I mean, this is the Battle of Minh Thanh Road. I mean, it's probably got a Wikipedia for it. Look, Wikipedia, someone has written their own blog on it, sort of thing, and it really is, it's just an engagement, an ambush on a road. I think they wanted these people. I think this was a sort of decoy. They were waiting there, but they're small sort of incidents, but they're heavily sort of like documented, which means that when you put this map together, a large part of what you're doing is actually presenting a real and true account of the situation at the time. So although it might be difficult to play because there's the way zones of control work and the implications of what was happening at the time, in comparison to, say, sort of some of the larger, more densely countered games, you've got this sort of very exact model, and so basically this tool will allow me to go back on for example, models like this, and say, okay, well, what was the designation of this unit? And what I'm trying to get to here is someone might take me to ground on this scenario, and that's one thing that's never really happened as of yet. And they'd say, look, you've got the 272nd there, and I'll say, yeah, and they'll say, well, they only had 4 companies, and you've given them sort of this many, or something very factual. And I could say, okay, well, that means that essentially what I need to do is to to add a few more. And you could say, well, someone might say, well, they weren't that close, they were over here. I mean, you could actually then start to sort of edit and modify the actual layout and the population of the map with regards to the counters to actually take it to an almost exact level, which is always what I've had in mind. But having this sort of upload-download facility to suddenly make that a lot easier. Whereas even if I had to do it here, I'd have to sort of go in, and then I'd have to sort of look at that, and I'd have to edit that, and then I'd have to, I have a duplicate function, so I can duplicate that, but it comes out exactly the same. So then I have to go down to the bottom of the list, and I have to open it, and then I have to change things, and I have to look for the map reference, come back down here, put the map reference in. It's quite slow. Once I get this sort of spreadsheet thing sorted out, I'll be able to sort of race through a lot of these things. So anyway, I've chit-chatted for probably more than I should have, really. But I am sort of a little excited. About this new feature. There you go. There's some sort of what I've been sort of thinking about. Are there situations that are where it's going to look a bit pear-shaped? No, it's not too bad. I think it works in most cases. I mean, you know, that looks a lot more attractive to me. You know, that sort of work down there. Yeah. I think what I might do though is put them in Times Roman. I think that's what's jarring me a little with it, is that they look nice and bold, but they look too bold. That's what I said earlier on, is that they look bold, and of course they're bold, but the thing with them is that they're bold when they should be that sort of more eloquent map type font. So I think I'm going to do that now. I'll upload this video and I'll change the font, I think, on that. I think that should work. Okay, well obviously it's just a lot of warbling, but I hope you like the new maps, etc, etc, and I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.